Hey guys, what's up? This is Tony from digitalreadymarketing.com. In this video, I'm going to talk about WP Rocket. It's a WordPress plugin that helps speed up WordPress websites. Now, right off the bat, I can tell you I like it. As an SEO consultant and as an affiliate marketer, as you know, I do optimize quite a number of websites. And I have tried free caching plugins, and the ones that I was using was W3 Total Cache. It's free, and WP Rocket isn't. It's a paid plugin. So in case if you're not interested in paying for it, you can stop the video right here actually. But I can tell you it's worth it. It shows improvements in site speed compared to even W3 Total Cache. And another reason is it can be used on some of the hostings out there that have their own caching system. For example, one of the most famous one is WP Engine. It has a list of plugins that it disallows to be used on their platform because it already has its own cache system in place. So it disallows WP Super Cache, WP File Cache, and W3 Total Cache. You know, all those famous ones, famous free caching plugins, you cannot use it in WP Engine. But interesting enough, it allows WP Rocket. So it seems the guys at WP Rocket, they managed to create the plugin in a way that it doesn't conflict with WP Engine's caching system. And there are quite a number of sites out there that use their own, they have their hosting caching system in place. So this is a really good news, for someone who needs to optimize website, across different hosting platforms. WP Rocket seems to be a very promising plugin to use for that. And once again, it's not free, you have to pay for it. And I personally actually have this plan infinite because I do have to optimize quite a number of websites, including my own, which are affiliate websites, as some of you might know. So, I like it. It's easy to use and it seems to provide good improvements. And in fact, let me show you right now, side-by-side comparison, how much improvements it does provide. So here is a website site speed test result. This is without any plugins, without the site speed plugin being implemented. Okay, so there's no W3 Total Cache or there's no WP Rocket, and this is the state. And as you can see, the start render time is 1.5 seconds. Now, one thing I want to point out is that a lot of people, when they talk about site speed, they tend to focus on the fully loaded time or the load time, and which is important, but it's largely influenced by obviously the amount of file that's on the page. In this case, requests, there are 159 requests here. It's 4,694 bytes. So it's a relatively big page that's getting tested here. So obviously it takes about 10 seconds to load, but that's not really what the user experience. What the user experience is when they get to the site, then they start seeing content being loaded. That's what they want. That's what they see. And in fact, here it takes about 1.5 seconds to start render, and the DOM gets fully loaded at around 4.5 seconds, which is pretty good by itself, even without any site speed plugin being implemented. And the reason being because I do use a pretty good hosting company. And I also already have CDN enabled here. So it's not totally not optimized, so to speak. It just it doesn't have the site speed plugin being implemented. That's the stage that I'm showing you here. So in case if you're interested in learning more about how you can improve site speed, I do have a blog post about it. So I'll include the link at the bottom of the video in the video description, so you can take a look at it. And there are really 4 things, 4 main categories where you can improve, how you can improve the site speed. So please take a look at that. And I'll also include a link to the hosting company that I use, and the name of the hosting is called WPXhosting, in case you're interested. Okay, so coming back to here, so having said that, 1.5 seconds is when it starts render, and about 4.5 seconds is when the DOM content is loaded. And let's talk about DOM a little bit actually here as well. So DOM is essentially an API for HTML, XML. So it's an interface where all the JavaScript or the CSS they get rendered, get processed. So when it's processed, depending on how this CSS and JavaScript and all those stuff that are necessary to make the web page become interactive, become useful, that's really the time it takes for that to happen. That's what DOM is. And if you scroll down here and take a look, you can see there are all this JavaScript and CSS that are not necessary, they are not critical for the page to become useful, to become interactive, and so that's why they should be rendered later, and which is the case here for most of them, and some of them actually can be deferred as well. And this is why we use the site speed plugins to improve site speed, because they can help moving those CSS and JavaScript rendering sequence to later, so that the DOM will get loaded faster, and the site can get rendered much faster. So let me show you what it looks like when I use W3 Total Cache. So as you can see, the render time remains more or less the same, but the DOM content loaded and DOM interactive, it decreased about 1 second right here, which is a good thing, which means it did its job. And when you look at the requests, you actually decrease it down to 124. And the reason for that is I actually combine some of the JavaScript and CSS into a much bigger file, so that it doesn't have to load one after the other. And to get into the detail, if you have HTTP 2, you don't really need to do that. I'm not getting to what HTTP 2 is and how is that different from HTTP 1 here. But essentially, what I did here is basically I decreased the number of files so that it load a little bit faster and render a little bit faster using W3 Total Cache. Then let me show you what it looks like when I do WP Rocket. So WP Rocket, interesting enough, further improve that for another 1 second. And start render seems to be a little bit faster. Now let's be fair here. Even though this is still on the same hosting, it's the same website, everything's the same, except instead of W3 Total Cache, I use WP Rocket here. As you can see, the first byte is a little bit faster compared to the other time that has been tested. And I test this 9 times. So, sometimes it's better than the other ones. And that's the way I like to test it, because, there are variants where every time we test it, there's something different. And in this instance, for some reason, the first byte wasn't as fast, so taking that into consideration, there's 0.5 seconds slower. So in theory, the first render is actually not changing much. Shouldn't change much, 1.5, 1.6 seconds here. But without a doubt, you can see the DOM is much faster. And the request, interesting enough, is actually a little bit more compared to W3 Total Cache. And the original was 159. So WP Rocket did consolidate some files here and there, and so it did that did contribute a little bit, but other than that, it seems to did quite a bit of modification on some other factors where it's making it loading much faster. And to further improve this, there's a lazy loading option, which actually conflicts with the theme that I use. So I don't use this on the live site, on the actual, the site that I serve to users. But as a testing, I had to enable it, disable it to see what's working, what's not. And interesting enough, when I use the lazy loading, unfortunately, it's not compatible with the theme that I use. But just to show you the power of it, it decreased it down to 58. So that's a substantial improvement. And I do have, I actually tested this out. There is a lazy loading function in W3 Total Cache, and there's also other plugins that you can use. And when I use those, it didn't really work as well as WP Rocket for some reason. And to give you another backstory, I have tested on other sites, those lazy load plugin, and also W3 Total Cache. For some reason, they didn't work as well as WP Rocket on some of those other sites that I own. So interesting enough, WP Rocket really did their job. I don't know what they did, but they seem to work better than W3 Total Cache. So once again, you can see, there's a substantial improvements. It really improves the site speed. And now let me show you the backend, how easy it is to actually set it up. So after you install it, this is what it looks like. And by default, it already applies the browser cache and page cache just by installing it with WP Rocket. Whereas in W3 Total Cache or other caching plugins, you probably have to manually enable them. And if you have used W3 Total Cache, there's a lot of options in there, and it could be very confusing. Whereas WP Rocket is very easy to use, as you can see here. And once again, if you're interested, I did make some comparison in this blog post here for each of the ways that you can improve site speed. And I made a comparison of where, for example, browser cache, W3 Total Cache, you have to enable it, whereas WP Rocket, it's already enabled as soon as you just install the plugin and enable it. You don't have to even click any buttons, it's already there. So again, WP Rocket is really easy. And for this website, the configuration that I have, let me show you. So mobile cache, it's enabled. File optimization, minify HTML, it caused some issues, so it's not enabled here. I did strip the query strings, which, if you have that string, sometimes those files don't get cached, so it's good to strip it out. It seems to work well with this particular theme and website. I minified the CSS, combine CSS, and this is again another big thing with WP Rocket. It's very easy. You just click on this button and then make sure you exclude the ones that could cause problem. In this case, one of the theme CSS file seems to cause problems, so I eliminate that. Doesn't include that in the combined CSS. Whereas in W3 Total Cache, you would have to actually, there's a bit of manual work, let's put it that way, if you want to combine the files over there. And then optimize CSS delivery, it defer render the block in CSS for you just by clicking the option. JavaScript, same thing here, minify JavaScript file, combine JavaScript file, make sure you exclude the ones that cause problem, and then delay loading, defer loading JavaScript, and things like that. So those are enabled for that. Media, like I said, lazy load, I don't use this option, but when you use it, you can see it dramatically improve the performance right there. The fully load is down to half 5.4 seconds, just by having that option there. And in case you don't know what lazy load is, it basically doesn't load the image or videos depending on what media it is until you scroll down. So let's say I have a file, image file right down here, but when the page is loaded, it doesn't get loaded. Unless I scroll it down all the way, then it gets loaded. So that's how it speeds up the website speed. But again, I don't use it for this particular website because it causes problem, some issues with it. And then preload. So I activate this preload. The difference being, well, actually, I'm not getting into details here, and you can actually read that on this page. I did explain what the difference between having preload and not preload. But essentially, what it does is it basically create a cache version of the page, and so when user visit, the page is loaded very fast compared to it actually needs to get processed. So that's what preload is. But if you want details, please read the blog post that I have. And then there are some advanced rules which I didn't really need to touch them. And database, this is just for cleanup, which I haven't cleaned it up yet. CDN, my hosting company, the WPXhosting, it has its own CDN, so I don't even need to enable it here. But if you do have different CDN service, then you would have to configure it here. Habit, I don't really use this, so it's left as is, even though it does already do some reduce activities here and there. So habit is basically it's when you create a post, WordPress auto saves it, and so there's some improvements by tweaking the heartbeat function there. And then there's add-ons. If you use Facebook Pixel or these other ones, it can actually improve the performance of those as well. Image optimization, it comes with image which is pretty good. I have tried it on some of my websites, but you can also use other plugins such as Smush, which that's one that I use actually, which I can show you right here. Smush, SMUSH, in case you're interested. Then there's other tools and then tutorial. So as you can see, it's pretty simple. There are only a few buttons you need to click here and there and to enable it. And so again, I like it. And even though it's not free, I do see it's worth the price. So thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, please give it a thumb up, subscribe it, and I will see you in the next video.